This is Sporting Life.
Well, a bonus extra Sporting Life Racing podcast this week because we're reacting to the news of the changes to the Cheltenham Festival released Thursday at midday by the Jockey Club. To do so, it's David Ord in the company of Ed Chamberlain, Graham Cunningham, Billy Nash and David Johnson. The usual panel, and just to sort of, before we start, I'll just underline that it's going to be in two segments. It's the changes to the race programme and the efforts to improve the racegoer customer experience. In terms of changes to the race programme, as we already knew, the Turners is replaced by a Grade 2 limited novice handicap chase over the same distance. The cross-country is changed from a conditions race to a limited handicap. The other changes to discuss, the National Hunt Chase now becomes a Class 2 novice handicap chase, 0 to 145, and amateur rider restrictions are lifted, meaning professional jockeys are allowed to take part. The Ryanair Mares Novices Hurdle changed to the conditions of that. There's removing the penalty structure, meaning it's now a level weight contest. Now, if you win a Pertemps qualifier, not just finishing the first race, if you win one, you've got the win and you're in, providing that you're in the weights themselves at the point of the final declaration. So that's the incentive there, win and you're in element. Apologies to the Breeders' Cup for stealing that particular moniker. And in terms of horses running in the non-novice handicaps at the festival, the minute they've got to have run at least 3 times in chasers or 4 times hurdles to be eligible, that increases from 4 to 5. So there you are. They're the changes that have been outlined to the Fes for 2025. Ed, what do you make of them as an initial glance?
Well, I've written on a number of occasions comparing Cheltenham to Manchester United under the Glazers. And the reason I did that is because the Glazers took their eye off the product, i.e. what was going on the field at Old Trafford, and watched the revenues come in and have paid the penalty for taking their eye off the product. It is going to take Manchester United God knows how long to catch up, both in terms of on the field and off the field. So I applaud Cheltenham for realising that something had to be done. They've listened and they've acted. And I hope they've acted in time. They haven't done what the Glazers did and sat for too long. I think they should be applauded for acting pretty quickly, really. And hopefully we're going to see the benefits of it. I feel sorry for them in a way because, you know, there's other festivals and other races that have got bigger problems than Cheltenham in my eyes. I think it's partly people are so passionate about Cheltenham that changes have been made, which is great. For some reason, it's fashionable to knock Cheltenham, which I never understand at all. And I think they should be applauded, as I say, for listening and acting. And a lot of what they've done, which we'll go on to discuss, I like. There's a couple of things I'd have done more. But listen, everyone's going to say, some are going to say they've gone too far. Some are going to say they've not gone far enough. That's the nature of the beast.
GC, they said they were reacting to competitiveness or issues around competitiveness of races and the racing population, the horse population right now. Let's start with the National Chase. Was that a change you would have made?
Well, first of all, I think that's an interesting comparison Ed made about Man United. And unlike a fan I saw once interviewed on telly who just said, "Got to get rid of the Glaziers." Salford lad, as you can tell. I applaud Cheltenham for this. The 3 wise men, as I call them, Ian Renton and 2 other blokes whose names I can't think of. But joking apart, I like what they're doing. There's not everything I've been seeking, more of that later. But what I like is that it's not very often in horse racing, especially jump racing, where the racecourse, in this case, takes views from all sides, but they've chosen to go against what I'm sure a few key stakeholders, sponsors, trainers, owners might have wished for. You know the names I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of the top trainers in Britain and Ireland for whom the programme was working very nicely indeed. Even the governor of Turners, I think his name's Paul Day, he would have quite liked the Turners Chase to remain as a set weights grade 1. But Cheltenham have reacted to something very important. As everyone here will agree, the buzz was going out of jump racing's most cherished meeting. Something had to be done. Overall, I think the changes are very positive. The National Hunt Chase was a race that was not dying on its arse, but it was not the race it used to be, and it wasn't working in its new form. We've had 6, 7, 8, 9 runners in recent years. So I applaud the changes to that. I'm not quite sure whether a real long distance handicap chase for novices is the way to go, but maybe we'll hear more of that in the next days and weeks.
Billy, where are you with these changes?
Not so sure, Artie. Obviously, we'll have to wait and see how they work out. But there's a couple of them that I'm. The National Hunt Chase, for one, I'm not at all convinced by that. Making it into a novice handicap, I don't really see the point of it. Also, the fact that amateur jockeys are now no longer allowed ride in the race, that's not going to go down very well.
I think they can ride, but it's open to professionals as well.
Well, open to professionals as well, okay. But it used to be, obviously, confined to amateur jockeys, and the vast majority of them won't get a ride in that race now, apart from maybe one or two of the elite guys. But that's not going to go down very well. The other change, I was having a look this morning through handicap hurdles. The fact that you now need to have 5 runs to get into one of the festival handicap hurdles. I was having a look this morning because I'm not sure how big an issue this has been. So since 2000 already, in the county hurdle, there have been 5 horses have won the county hurdle having on their 5th start or less since 2000. The first was American Trilogy for Paul Nicholls, all the way back in 2009. And since then, it has been Willie Mullins. He's done it 4 times with Final Approach, Saint Roi, State Man, and Absurd. So they've all run. Saint Roi and State Man were having their 4th start in the county hurdle. The other 2 had 4 runs. They were on their 5th start in the county hurdle. Not a massive problem, I would have thought. But even less so when it comes to the Coral Cup, because since 2000 in the Coral Cup, only 1 horse has won the Coral Cup, having had less than the criteria of starts, and that's Au Petit Soin, who won it for Paul Nicholls on his 3rd start, his first run in the UK. Martin Pipe did win it with Ilnamar way back in 2002 on his first hurdle start in Britain, but he'd had plenty of runs on over jumps in France, and had 3 runs in handicap chases prior to the festival in true Martin Pipe style. But look, I don't think that's a big issue. I think obviously this is a tactic to prevent Willie Mullins winning it with the likes of a State Man or an Absurd. But apart from that, I don't, like I said, I don't think it was a big problem. Trying to get horses to get an extra run, it just means that novices will be pretty much kept out of the race now, and you could easily have just written that into the conditions, saying it's for second season novices rather than having to add 5 runs. But like I said, not a big deal. I'm not a huge fan of these changes, but sure, let's see how they work out.
David, we've got 3 more handicaps now as a result at the festival. Are you happy with the balance?
I think the problem remains with the novice chases is that there's still 4 races and you still got that same pool of horses, so it's still going to be diluted a little bit. So, I mean, part of the problem is that you're stuck with 4 days and you're stuck with the same number of races, because I don't think there's a way where we can start taking races away without it impacting the customer experience too much. So I think the hands were tied a little bit, but I do have the concerns with regards that the novice chase issue, that we're still going to get smallish fields, because as GC was suggesting, the National Hunt Chase is the real demand for a 0 to 145 for horses over 3 miles 6 furlongs, or is it trying to maintain part of the history of the race and you end up sort of pleasing nobody and offending everybody almost, because you don't get it fitting as to suit anybody really. So I think it remains to be seen. You know, as others have said, I think it's the right thing to try and do things, but whether sticking with the 4 novice chases is the right thing, I'm not so sure.
We touched on the Turners becoming a handicap, and I really like that idea, because it will funnel the proper Group 1 horses into the Arkle and the Brown Advisory, thereby increasing the strength of both those races. That's a good thing. It also democratizes the middle distance chase and gives you the chance of a Hunt Ball or a King Harold and plenty of other good stories. And Billy came out with great data there, which a lot of it suggests that these measures are taken to mitigate the success of the major operations. But there's definitely something to be said for giving people who don't have an unlimited budget for horses, etc., and 200 plus horses in the barn, a chance to be competitive at the Cheltenham Festival. And the other point to make from that is you need very significantly strong red hot betting races. That's why Royal Ascot was such a success this year, because every half an hour, 35, 40 minutes, here comes another really deep, complex, compelling betting contest. And that's what we've been lacking at Cheltenham for a few years now.
Yeah, because I disagree with you, Billy, on this. I really do. From my point of view, this makes life so much easier. You've got two standout Grade 1 novice chases. So much simpler for the audience. So much simpler, hopefully, anti-post. And it throws up other positives as well. Just as you said, it's exactly the point I was going to make, GC. Cheltenham needs the buzz back, but it also needs stories. It also needs the smaller players. It needs the love shared so badly, as we saw for the first time last year on Thursday, and the place was completely different. So I think for the novice chasers, from my point of view, and terrestrial television's point of view, is great now. I'm not too worried about the 3 mile 6 race. We'll see what happens with that. That's not a huge concern for me and ITV for what it's worth. It's the novice hurdles now. You look at that and think that's great. But now the novice hurdles, untouched, you've still got 4 options. If you include the mares race, the mares novice hurdle, which is now sort of, if you like, had its status elevated with the penalty structure change, which is the right thing to do. Is it right that they didn't change anything there, I ask?
Kevin Blake has argued that I'm going to get the name of this race wrong. It's the 2 mile 5 novice hurdle, what used to be the
Istabracks race.
But Kevin Blake has suggested that should be made a handicap as well, which I thought was a little radical. It's not something I would have gone quite that far. But no, as we chat about this, it's clear Cheltenham always engenders a lot of passionate argument. It's clear that as a body of people, we tend to be relatively aligned in logical arguments, but this is a topic that people don't really align on Cheltenham Festival, isn't it? Everyone has their own idea of how it should look and feel.
We're not in danger, though, of dumbing down, for want of a better word, racing by getting rid of these Grade 1s and just chucking extra handicaps at the festival. I'm sure the bookmakers will be delighted, extra revenue for them, but I'm not sure that the actual festival itself will benefit from this.
It'll be more competitive, surely.
Chases, for example, will, there'll be horses come out of the Kimure or one of the other handicap chases, the staying handicap chases, to run in a national hunt chase, which then will have a knock-on effect on possibly an Irish National a month later. If you're going to run a national hunt chase over 3-6, are you going to come back for an Irish National less than or just over a month later, or that kind of thing? So I don't know. I'm not in favour of just making these big races handicaps.
Those championship races, the Arkle and the 3 miler. Do you not think they're going to be much more competitive now?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure they're going to be massively more competitive, to be honest.
I think they will. I really do.
I think they will, but I also think there's a chance that the odd horse, if a Willie or a Gordon has 2, 3, 4 contenders, that they'll only run a couple and keep 1 or 2 back for Liverpool, Fairy House, or Punchestown, etc. That's something I've touched on before, but you can't design your plan based on that. And
you see, you really think an owner, you really think a big owner is going to say,
yeah, I know what you mean, Ed. I know what you mean, and that's a fair point. But what if they're in the same ownership?
Here's an idea then. What do you think the top weight will be running off in the Turners then? How high a quality? It's an open handicap. How high do you think they'll go in terms of saving their ideal 2.5 mile horse? Will they run a 160 horse in it, a 155 horse, a 150 horse?
Well, if you're a 160 horse, you need to be in the Grade 1, don't you, as a novice?
You should be, yeah, but obviously they will still have the option, if they've got it, to split them up.
Do you know what it was before, DJ? Because that worked perfectly well for me.
Well, it was 0 to 140 or 145,
I
the
think.
Close brothers.
They were being put away in November in the past, weren't they? They get to 142 or 141, and that was it. You wouldn't see them again.
But that will be a very, very live betting race for a long while before the meeting. And I don't think we should underestimate the need to have compelling betting puzzles instead of people like me going to the Cheltenham Festival and going, yeah, another 8 to 11 chance. That's the price. You have to offer a compelling betting product. And people have been walking around that festival for the last few years thinking, in betting terms, so what?
David, Cheltenham made the point that everything was reviewed. Not everything changed, but everything was reviewed. It included that mares programme, the mares races, the mares novice, the mares chase, the mares hurdle. The argument, Ben Linfoot thinks they should all be moved to April. Give the mares a chance of running Grade 1s in March and then have their championship day in April. Do you think that they still should be there front and centre at the festival?
I've not really got a problem with them existing as they are. I think the change that they've made to the mare's novice does make sense, so that whatever passes the post first is the best horse at the weights. I think that's the kind of thing that we really do want. I think last year we had an instance where the first past the post was getting weight from the second and third, and I think they were coming out as the best horse of the weights, which is unsatisfactory when it's supposedly to be a championship novice race. So I think the change that they've made there is good. There's a possibility about whether you need a mare's novice and a mare's hurdle. You could potentially have amalgamated the two and given the novices an allowance. So, you know, there's loads of things they could have done. This is what they have done. And I think making changes is better than just leaving it as it is. So I think, you know, they're moving in the right direction at the very least.
Billy, if we don't need a 2 mile, 2.5 and a 3 mile novice chase, why do we need novice hurdles at each distance?
Yeah, that's a good point. But again, I would argue that they should have left the 2.5 mile novice chase. I was quite happy with it. I think, to be honest, the novice hurdles, if they're not broke, don't fix them. And those 3 novice hurdles have been really competitive races down through the years. Okay, in the last couple of seasons, Willie has dominated the 2.5 mile race in particular. That's just a sign of the times at the moment, and that will probably continue in the next couple of years anyway. Like those races have been around a long time. I don't see the need to dabble with them. Other people will. I think there are enough opportunities spread throughout the meeting for all those horses already. You know, if they don't want to run them in a Grade 1 novice hurdle, by all means run them in a Coral Cup or whatever, you know. So I think they're fine, but other people I'm sure will have a different opinion on them.
I think John Pullen's answer to that is the horse population, isn't it, Audie? The horse population allows for those novice hurdles while there's a shortage of top quality novice chasers, hence the changes have been made, which makes sense, to be fair.
They have worked well and they fill well, really well over time. But as Billy touched on there, if you have a look at the way those races have shaped up in the last couple of years, the inability of the vast majority of British jump yards to produce a high quality young horse capable of making a splash in that type of race is one of the biggest problems that British jumping faces at the moment, by far.
So where do all these potential Grade 1 novice hurdles fill the Grade 1 novice? Where do they go the season after? Because they're not going novice chasing at Cheltenham. They're not in the Grade 1 features with the pool so shallow in the champion hurdle, etc. What happened? Where are these also runs, or the number, the ones that making up the numbers, are the field sizes in the big Grade 1 novice hurdles going next season after? Because is it the chasing route? And if so, are they just not going up to scratch?
It's a very good question.
I think they just end up finding the level through the handicap system, don't they? And I think that's why I've got a bit of a problem with regards to not doing anything with changing the novice hurdles, because they've made it more difficult now for novice hurdlers to run in the open handicaps, but they haven't done anything about helping horses that are rated, you know, the novice hurdlers that are rated in the 130 to 145 bracket. They don't have anywhere to go now, really, because you're making it more difficult for them to run in races like the county hurdle. Yet a 130 to 145 novice isn't really adding anything, as far as I can see, to races like the Supreme novices or the 2.5 mile novice. So what I would rather see is there be a novice handicap hurdle for that kind of horse, because I don't have a problem with, I mean, everyone goes on about how, look at the Supreme now, how you used to get 20 odd runners every year. Now it's down to about 12. But of the ones that turn up now, it's a proper race and it's competitive. So we don't need the no-hopers. But those horses that were going off at big prices in the Supreme, why not allow them to run in a novice handicap hurdle in the 130 to 145 bracket? And there you've got a brand new race that is then still going to be competitive and adds an interesting betting element.
That's not essentially what the Martin Pipe is, though. Is that not pretty much not 145 handicap that is contested almost exclusively by novices?
I'd like to take us on to one thing from each member of the panel as to what you would have liked to have seen done, which hasn't been done. But first of all, I will mention, it's a tiny thing, this, but it's worth mentioning that the small adjustments to the handicap qualifications, that you need one extra run to qualify for the non-novice handicaps, and the fact that winners of the Pertemps qualifiers will qualify for the final, provided they're in the handicap. That does have potential small positive spin-offs for the lead-up races, and that's important. I think these big festivals should try to help the whole as well as their own product by inserting clauses that encourages more competition in the winter months. So if you get a few more horses trying to win a Pertemps qualifier, that's not a bad thing. If you have a few lightly raced horses having one extra run to qualify for a handicap at the festival, that's a pretty good thing as well.
That was unclear, I thought, already from the piece I saw there about the Pertemps. Yes, the winner will get in if they're high enough in the weights. Do you still have to finish in the first four, or
yes, you do?
Is that still a stipulation?
That criteria is still in place.
Okay.
And the same number of qualifiers remain as this season. There's no change to the number of qualifiers, but the only change is that if you win, you're guaranteed a spot if you would be in the handicap itself at the final declaration stage.
Can I kick off with what you would have liked to have seen done? And I think this is a glaring omission, and I suspect that one or two others might be thinking along these similar lines. We've had changes to the penalty structure for the mares novice hurdle. It's neither here nor there as far as I'm concerned. It will mean significant amounts to others. But I find it hard to believe that it wasn't strongly considered to impose a penalty for Group 1 winners in the mares hurdle itself, because we've had Honeysuckle was legit for a champion hurdle early on in her career. She won a mares hurdle. Lossiemouth, etc. last season. That filly of Willie Mullins that won 5 or 6 mares hurdles, what was she called?
Vega.
Q Vega never ran in a champion hurdle because she could mop up. It strikes me as a glaring omission and I have to think pressure has been applied, and with all these negotiations, there has to be give and take here and there. But I'm really surprised that they've not taken measures to try and guide the world-class mares like Honeysuckle, like Lossiemouth, like Q Vega, one or two others we could mention as well, towards a champion hurdle or a stayers hurdle, rather than a relative penalty kick at set weights in the mares hurdle. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I completely agree. The mares hurdle was the one that I was coming back to. The horses that's taken away from a champion hurdle. I mean, you look at last year's and the fact that we didn't get Lossiemouth in there. Well, what she would have added to the race, let alone your Quevegas and your Annie Powers and horses like that. It does seem such a shame to me. DJ, was it the novice handicap hurdle for you? Is that the change that you would have made?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I've sort of already explained that. So yeah, I think there's room for a novice handicap hurdle, definitely.
How about that Sandown race, David? That EBF final at Sandown, which is run on the Saturday before the festival, isn't it?
Yeah, it's true. Once you start making changes, there are knock-on effects, aren't they? Definitely.
I suggested sending the Albert Bartlett to Sandown and bringing the EBF final to Cheltenham. It got poo-pooed. That was in a previous podcast, so we'll move on. Billy, I presume it'd be a British-only race for you, a couple of British-only Grade 1s?
Yeah, with 4 runners already, how exciting they would be. No, like the one race that I think adds nothing to the festival for me is the Mayor's Chase. I can see why they put it there. I don't think it has had the effect that they wanted it to have. In fact, 2 years ago, when you had Impervious beating Allegory de Vassy, I think either of those mares would have held their own in one of the open Grade 1 novice chases. Limerick Lace last year, who went and won it, was one of the favourites of the Grand National afterwards, so she'd have been very competitive in a festival handicap. I don't think it adds anything to the festival, and I think those mares would improve whatever races they go to instead. So I would just get rid of that. That'll be my first change anyway.
Ed, you can go last. What's missing that you would have done?
Well, I'll hold my hands up. I was consulted on this. I was one of the people that was consulted on this. I didn't get too involved in the race programme. I was keen to emphasise that from our point of view, the Cheltenham Festival remains incredibly popular. It's huge for the sport. Yes, it needs to get a bit of that buzz back. And from the Jockey Club's point of view, they've got to pack it out again. The alarm for them from last year was the drop in crowd. Now, how do they do that? Changing the turners to a novice handicap chase isn't going to make a jot of difference in terms of bringing crowds back. in terms of bringing sports fans back. And that's where I've got involved, if you like, and that's what I feel passionately about. And the number one reason for that is cost. Now, they've listened and they've taken action. There's meal deals, there's the hotels, there's all sorts of things going on. Again, they've listened and they're acting. Whether they're going far enough, we'll wait and see. Transport, another one, where there's some really good ideas. I love the ideas of Park and Ride. I love the extra coaches. I love the 700 parking spaces in a nearby multi-story. All good stuff. But the one thing, and I don't yet know if it's going to be interactive, and one thing I really pushed hard for is your first connection as a racegoer when you arrive. Because Cheltenham has a lot of once a year, occasional racegoers. That first impression is so, so important. That's why meetings like York and Glorious Goodwood are so successful, because you arrive there and you feel welcome. At York, you get your free race card. That's what Cheltenham's got to get a little bit of. And I'm confident, we haven't heard about it yet, that they might do that. Be that with racemakers, or take ideas from London 2012 in engaging racegoers, helping racegoers. We've got to stop that first contact being, I need to search your bag and take your picnic out of your bag. That's just got to stop. It's got to stop. And that, for me, is much more important in bringing racegoers back to the Cheltenham Festival. The Cheltenham Festival is still very special. It is still, for us, the last 2 years has been record numbers watching on TV. But to bring those racegoers back, I promise you, the most important thing is the racegoer experience, not that amateurs can't ride in the National Hunt Chase or the Turners as a novice handicap chase. It's all good and it's all part of getting that buzz back, but that's not going to bring the racegoers back.
Let's talk then about some of these efforts to improve customer experience and festival experience. Car parks last year, well documented the problems that were there. There's more hard standing trackway being laid, 3 times as much as there was last year, covering the equivalent of 17 football pitches. I don't know how you visualise that, but there you go.
I got more stick. I got more stick for that last year than anything else during the whole year.
Yeah.
When I played devil's advocate. My family had got stuck in the car park. I was furious about it. And I played devil's advocate with Hoylesey when he was having his rant about it. Oh, I got absolutely vilified for it. They've got to sort it out, and they've taken steps to do so, which is good.
You've touched on the park and rides, which are in place. More national express coaches being laid on than ever before. More horse-facing areas for racegoers to drink, trying to reduce the rush between races. Bar facilities being upgraded. Ed, you've touched upon the meal deals, and in terms of value, ticket prices frozen at the 2024 levels. Anyone buying a ticket for any day of the festival gets 20% off a ticket, or tickets purchased for other days, barring Gold Cup Friday. So if you bought one for the Thursday and the Friday, you get 20% off your Thursday ticket. That's reacting to more people attending just a single day of the festival than has been the case before. Groups of 6 can now save 10% on group bookings now. That was 15 before, and obviously there's their new package trying to drive down hotel costs, etc. David, we're sheltered from this. Members of the media, we've got press room. We're fortunate. We're so fortunate to be paid to be there. It was clear, was it, the general feedback last year? People were voting with their feet. They were just finding the whole experience too expensive.
It does, yeah. And I mean, you look at these in isolation and you think, oh, well, it's no real big deal. But I think it's one of those where lots of little wins can add up to a big win. And it's like, well, if you save 20% here, if you save 10% here because you're going with 6, and then once you get in there, you're saving a little bit on, or it's easier to get a drink. There's not so many queues. There's more facilities. So I think it's all making the point that it's like, who was the football rugby coach, Marginal Gains, or was he
David Brailsford?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, Brailsford. So it's sort of adding up all the little wins, and hopefully it'll all come good in terms of enhancing the customer experience on the day, and even better than when you back the winner of this new race that's 3 miles 6 furlongs for novices.
Billy, there's one thing that strikes. I do think Cheltenham get a rum deal in some ways, in that they've got absolutely zero control over hotel prices, something they're holding their hands up now. And the park and ride, the ideas that they've got in place are trying to help people if they want to stay further out to come into Cheltenham. For all best will in the world, if a hotel can fill at £600 a night, it's going to charge £600 a night.
Of course it is, and that's not just the Cheltenham issue. We see that everywhere, or do we see it? quite a lot in Ireland and Dublin at the moment. It's very difficult to get hotels on busy weekends. That happens all the world over. So that's not a Cheltenham centric problem. And in fairness, from what I can see from these changes, at least they are recognising that and they're doing their best. They are trying to help in some small way, in whatever way they can. But like you said, their hands are tied when it comes to, unless they build their own hotel, their hands are tied when it comes to hotel prices.
I mean, don't forget, it wasn't that long ago, GC, was it? We were talking about a 5-day festival. That's the post-COVID boom. There's a definite sense of realism, and they're trying to meet the challenge to some extent here, at least.
Yeah, I think as a fan, even as a media member, actually, it's hard to go for several days because it's very expensive to stay anywhere nearby, and people think media members are well looked after, and they are in many respects, but not many media organizations are emptying the trouser pockets to pay 300 quid a night for hotels, etc. So it's sort of reducing the number of days you're likely to go. I've only been for a couple of days the last few years, and I'd like to go more, but it's you know, from an accommodation point of view, it's very difficult. Ed's right. People love a deal. They love a deal, and even better than a deal, they love free stuff. And it's not really free in real terms, but if you're paying, you know, the full fee, a member's badge to get in at Cheltenham, you bloody well ought to be getting a program, and a good one at that. And you should probably, like the reverse fuel allowance here, a voucher for a free drink or a free sandwich would go a long way, I think. Especially, it would be a real, I don't think it would cost them a fortune, but it would be a really, really good PR gesture after a fairly torrid time on the pricing front in recent years, being accused of price gouging. I haven't seen any guarantees about food and beverage prices being held at 2024 levels, but we live in hopes.
I do know. The drink level it's £7.80 for the season. Is a pint of Guinness at Cheltenham and a premium lager. Other alcoholic drinks are cheaper, and I'm led to believe from a media briefing that's cheaper than a pint of Guinness at Lord's. So there you go. It's cricket.
And yeah, and this is where Cheltenham are so unlucky. Where do you hear people complaining about that at Lord's or Twickenham? Where do you hear people complaining about that at Aintree? Exactly the same Jockey Club prices. Never. Cheltenham get a stick for it. I think it's very unfair.
But I always thought that they didn't have to do a right lot to get this thing back on track, Ed. And I would be optimistic that these are significant steps in the right direction.
And Ed, Cheltenham realistic as well. They're not predicting this is going to bring the crowds back. They think there may even be a further dip in 20. This isn't what they think. This isn't a short-term boost to get back up to 2023, 2022 levels. They think it might take a little bit longer and a bit more than this.
I think that's because they had their fingers burnt, didn't they, in 2022 when there were rail strikes and so on, and they made bold predictions that 2023 would be a different ball game and the numbers would go massively up, and they didn't. They in fact went the other way. And if Cheltenham are guilty of anything, Audie, it's just getting that bit giddy with the success of the meeting, and they've got the high end absolutely right. Absolutely right. That will sell very quickly. Your swanky restaurants, your Michel Roux restaurants, and the top hospitality, they've got that right. What they've taken their eye off was the bottom end. And as GC said, it doesn't take a lot to get it right. You just hope it's not too late, and you just hope that these things resonate, because it's the right thing to do. Possibly should have happened before, and let's hope it gets the reaction we all want, because we mustn't forget there's other things with bigger issues than this. It's fashionable to not Cheltenham and build up the Dublin Racing Festival. Look at the Dublin Racing Festival's crowd. Doesn't even sell out. Does not even sell out. So, I'm a great believer that Cheltenham, the stick it gets is, a lot of it is unfair. And some of it is fair, and they've reacted and listened, which I think is good.
Billy, are you optimistic?
Always, Ardy. Always optimistic. Let's not knock them until we see how they work,
GC, your final thoughts on this review?
Mainly what I expected. I would have preferred to see penalties imposed, Group 1 penalties in the Mares Hurdle. I think that's a glaring omission. And there's a bit of randomness involved in this. As Ed said, Cheltenham hit a very heady, giddy peak for a while. It wasn't really sustainable, especially once COVID came along. And one mantra that I think is underplayed in racing at the moment. Holding your own is going all right at the minute. Cheltenham have dipped a bit, but they can consolidate now, and I think these changes are a step in the right direction.
And David, just finally to you, it is the barometer by which the jump season is measured right there along with the Cheltenham Festival, isn't it? That's the spotlight for the entire campaign.
Exactly, yeah. And, think about trainers like Dan Skelton last year who really made the breakthrough there. You ask him, what he's sort of aiming for this season. And yes, I suppose he might tell you that he'd love to win the trainer's title, but more winners at the festival will be absolutely something that he's mad keen on. In terms of the changes for me, like I say, in summary, I think 4 novice chases is still one too many, and I have slight concerns that the novice hurdles are still not going to be quite as competitive as what would be ideal. But the changes that they have made, it's moving in the right direction, and if it doesn't work fully, then there's no reason why they can't look again in another 12 months and make further tweaks, I think.
And Billy, seeing you in optimistic mood, final word to you. The last 24 hours, have you warmed to Al Riffer in the Ark at all?
Not at all, Dave. Not at all. Still had the same thoughts I had yesterday.
There you go. There's the bombshell. Thanks to Billy, to Ed, to GC and David. Full story available on the website about these changes to Cheltenham, and do let us know your thoughts at the bottom of the video on YouTube or through our usual social channels.
Download the Sporting Life app for the best racing coverage, including live racing blogs, fast results, stable tours, trainer and jockey interviews, expert opinion and tips.